everyone, Alicia here. Today I'm going to talk about the challenges that many people with ADHD face when learning. From 5th grade through high school and college, I was proud that I had straight A's. In fact, my family and friends referred to me as the geek, the nerd, smarty pants, book smart, and more, you get it. What no one knew until now is that I actually struggled and felt stupid every day of my life. Let me first explain. In kindergarten, yes, I remember that far back, I had what I now know as extreme anxiety. I was terrified of being left in this gated play area and would oftentimes not think through my decisions. And I walked to my sister, who was in the 3rd grade building down the hall. That happened every day, and every day either my sister or a teacher escorted me back to the gated area for the kindergartners. I felt misunderstood. I had no friends. The few people who liked me oftentimes didn't even play with me. So while my parents and teachers thought she's got a lot of friends, I did, but no one actually played with me on the playground. When I was in 1st grade, I was called a crybaby because I cried every single day. They put me in a Spanish class and I don't speak Spanish. So that intensified the crying, but finally I was put in a class that spoke English, but I still felt dumb. I remember being called on and answering a question when the teacher called on me, but she always gave me this look like I totally misunderstood her. I also had no friends here. Many people called me crybaby again and didn't want to play with me. 3rd grade, same thing. She's just shy. She's mama's girl. I actually cried because I felt misunderstood. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt dumb. I felt like I wasn't learning. I couldn't tell time to save my life. I stayed in every recess because I was forced to by teachers because they thought, you're just not trying hard enough, but if I keep you in recess, you'll try. I wasn't adding quickly like my peers, and I kept using my fingers. I remember we would play around the world for adding, where somebody goes behind you and you have to race to see who can add first. The teacher holds up the flashcards, and I lost every single time because I counted with my fingers. I didn't do well under pressure, and the school deemed that I'm just not trying hard enough. 4th grade, I almost failed, stayed back, almost. I couldn't keep up, and I was put in the class with kids who seemed to be all similar, and that was what other kids referred to us as the dumb class. That broke me. I lost my friends that I finally made in 3rd grade. I was the outcast again. I was bullied by 5th graders. In 5th grade, I was put in a class that my family thought I would do well in because the teacher was scary. He was tough. I was afraid of him. I was embarrassed that I felt everyone was smarter than me. He called on me a lot and expected the answer, and if it was wrong, well, the kids made fun of me, and he made me solve it and work it through in front of everyone. So I had to walk to the front of the class and solve the problem, and everyone would watch, and I'd hear the whispers and murmurs. Embarrassment doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. So one afternoon, I sat with a long division problem that I couldn't solve. Everyone in class could, but I couldn't. And I knew the next day I was going to have to go up and solve it because he told us we all had to choose a problem and solve it in front of the class. I cried, and I sat at the dinner table from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I asked my family for help, and they told me to do it on my own because they were done explaining it and I should get it by now. I asked my older sister, just give me the answer. I was desperate. I was like, just give me the answer and I would work it out and go backwards. I remember my mom telling me to go to bed, but I said I had to finish the problem. I ended up working backwards and seeing how the numbers got there. And then once I figured out how the answer was the answer, I solved it normally using a new piece of paper. And then I practiced with a few new problems to verify that I had the process, the steps. I jumped out of my seat and I screamed, I got it! And I remember my mom laughing, saying, about time. Yeah, about time. That feeling I didn't want to let go of. That feeling of I'm not dumb was just so overwhelming. I didn't want to lose that. So what many people saw as just my grades thereafter, what people didn't see was the numerous hours I spent in my room studying and reviewing my notes, homework, and other assignments to make sure that I actually got it. For those of you who don't know, people with ADHD struggle with working memory. We may see a problem get solved by the teacher or a parent or a friend, and then we forget the steps. Or we know the steps, but when it's our turn to solve it, we slow down and it takes us a long time to hold on to those steps. Like we know it, we're like, okay, hold on. I know this is the step, and then we'd have to picture it and solve it. It takes us a little longer. We need it written down. We need someone to actually write out the steps, or the teachers to do that, step by step, to study. Not a single teacher ever gave us a step-by-step to study. We were expected to watch, learn, and then do our homework, and then do our tests. For me, it was watch desperately, try to write everything the teacher did because I would forget. The time it took me to study the class notes, the homework, allowed me to excel in that class. One of the things that many people also didn't realize was that I did poorly on many math and science tests. They saw the overall grade as an A, and that was because I worked my butt off trying to get everything done perfectly, like homework, classwork, quizzes, and extra credit assignments, because I knew the tests were a weak spot of mine. It gave me that wiggle room because I knew those tests were not going to always look good and the overall grade wouldn't be affected. That is what I meant by I truly do work hard to do something. It just might have came, a little easier for other people. These are some specific examples of why having ADHD makes it challenging to learn quickly. Please note that we do learn, and when we get it, we are total badasses, but it takes us some time to get there, and here's why. In a learning environment, people with ADHD, we have poor working memory. We know it, and it just takes us a little bit to actually remember. And so sometimes people will have a smart remark like, well, let me remind you. Thank you. We need that. We know it. That's why we have to write it down, because we will forget. And then the more we look at our notes, we're like, okay, I really fully got it now. We cannot memorize easily. So people who memorize like 8 plus 6 was 14, it took me a long time. It took me a whole year to just keep counting, and then I remembered, oh yes, 8 plus 6 is 14. We forget requests or directions. So if you tell us something, Alicia, go down the hall and give this to the principal, I would forget and probably take a detour and use the restroom first, even though I probably didn't need to. We have slow math calculation. So doing like a long problem or statistics, anything with equations, we know the steps, but it takes us a little bit longer, and we have to actually compare the example to the problem that we're working on and work by step by step by step. And then once we finally get it, we can move a little bit like everybody else would normally, but that we were just a little bit slower with that. Spelling problems. Many people think I'm a great writer, and I am, but I oftentimes mix up words or forget words completely. I swap out letters, and I'm a professional, and I do have really excellent writing skills. I'm a published author, but it does take me some time to go back and find my mistakes, find my typos. I have to have several read-throughs of that. So I have to have patience with myself. We also have slow retrieval of information. I remember a former employer in the legal field said, I thought you just did the legal research. You should know it and be ready to answer the client's questions. I actually came up with solutions to adjust the legal field for me. Yes, I know the law and was always ready for client meetings and drafting, but I had to have a bulleted list of notes or an outline to make sure that I don't lose track of what I'm saying, and it can remind me of what I already know. Because we know it, it just takes us some time to remember or retrieve the information from our brain. Poor listening and reading comprehension was another issue. Even with years of practice, I must always take notes and keep my notes with me so that I can refer back to it. I won't remember everything, and that is okay, because that is why I have laptops and notes always open. Another issue is inattention. This one was big. I actually had to clarify for my former employer, who kept asking me to stop typing while she was talking and just listen. I am listening, and I'm sure many of you with ADHD, we listen. It's just we lose our attention, and then we struggle to hear what was the last thing they said. And that struggling to remember the last thing they just said makes us miss everything they are saying currently, which to them means we're not paying attention at all, but we are. She obviously doesn't have ADHD. when I learned that I have ADHD, I explained to her that when she talks, and oftentimes went on for days, it felt like I had to type my notes to keep my attention. If I sat there watching her, my attention will shift somewhere else. I also explained that when I happen to lose that attention, I can look quickly back at the last sentence she just said and I just typed and see what she just said, enabling me to never lose time having someone re-explain what they just said. Another bonus was that all my tasks were typed and I didn't have to go back and decipher my notes. I got clarity because I typed it all. I was able to copy and paste it where I needed to, like, put it in my task or my calendar. And I didn't lose any information because it was all there. So oftentimes, if you struggle with inattention, one of the best things you can do for yourself is either learn to type really fast or write quickly, but take notes and write either bubbled or bulleted and in order so that we can go back and know the order of the conversation. A lot of the times people with ADHD write a bubble over here and a bubble, and it's kind of like disorganized. If you write it in the order that someone says it, it'll refresh the entire conversation, and that's something that helps us that other people don't have to deal with. They don't have to struggle with that. I hope you found this helpful. If you or someone you know has ADHD, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know if you learned something new or if you just have feedback. Until next time, bye.